The Honourable Mary Ann Street.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak in the second reading of the legislation that is going to put in place this free trade agreement with Hong Kong. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Trade has elsewhere noted that the benefits of this free trade agreement with Hong Kong, or closer economic partnership we're calling it, is in fact, well, there are many aspects to the benefits. He has said previously that this closer economic partnership complements our free trade agreement with China, and there's no doubt that it does. And in fact, when I finished up, I think my speech on the first reading, I was just at that point of saying that this closer economic partnership agreement rationalises and allows businesses to springboard between Hong Kong and China. So New Zealand businesses will be better able to move seamlessly between Hong Kong and China with their trade and business arrangements. But the other important thing, and the Associate Minister who just presented the first speech on the second reading, Mr. Speaker, did make reference to the fact that this closer economic partnership breaks new ground for Hong Kong. It is the first agreement of this type outside of their agreement with mainland China. And for New Zealand, it adds to a growing list of free trade agreements which are both high quality and comprehensive. But it's worth noting, Mr. Speaker, that the novelty of this closer economic partnership was the item that took the media's attention when, at the time of signing, at the end of March earlier this year, the media reported this new free trade deal. And so they said, Mr. Speaker, that New Zealand and Hong Kong sign a free trade deal, the city's first outside of China. For them, they are clearly looking at it as a model and as a template for other such agreements, and that's good. That is hopefully of benefit to them. For us, Mr. Speaker, I think the whole panoply of new high-quality free trade agreements that we're achieving over the years between successive governments, I might add, because I don't think there is one free trade agreement that's been signed yet by this national government that began with them, but they all began with the Labor government. However, there are a couple of points that I want to draw attention to, Mr. Speaker, and one is the trade and services that I think is particularly apposite. Trade in services, usually we're accustomed to looking at tariff reductions and trade in commodities, but the trade in services is of real benefit to New Zealand. The securing of access should allow a whole range of services to maximise trade with Hong Kong. First of all, the closer economic partnership protects existing access for services, and that's good, having that cemented in, but that's simply the status quo. What it goes on to do is to talk quite comprehensively about the range of services which are now covered by this closer economic partnership. Professional services, business services, education, construction and engineering, logistics, air services, environmental services, computer and related services, and so on, tourism, sporting, and other recreational services. The list is quite expansive, Mr. Speaker, and I think that is one of the most exciting things about this closer economic partnership. That ability of New Zealand to trade on its strengths, not just in commodities, but in the provision of high-quality services. And that's something that's going to become increasingly important if we are going to improve the economic status of this country, if we're going to add to the wealth of this country, we need to look further to the exporting of services and look past the exporting of commodities alone. So this is quite significant. But there's one further item that I wanted to draw attention to, Mr. Speaker, and it's in the national interest analysis. We have labour and environment agreements as part of this closer economic partnership. We have for a long time, certainly for the last 10 years anyway, insisted on labour and environment clauses, first of all being attached to our free trade agreements, but more latterly becoming integral parts of our free trade agreements. And that is a good thing. If I can quote, Mr. Speaker, from the National Interest Analysis, it says that the New Zealand study on the benefits of a CEP, Closer Economic Partnership, between New Zealand and Hong Kong identified sustainable development as a core national objective for both economies. Sustainable development as a core national objective for both economies. We're getting to the stage, Mr. Speaker, with trade agreements where they cannot be seen in isolation. Trade agreements impact upon and are impacted by labour standards. They impact upon and are impacted by climate change agreements, emissions trading schemes, global efforts to reduce carbon footprints of industry in particular. So, Mr. Speaker, the fact that this agreement identifies sustainable development as a core national objective for both economies may come as news to some members of the National Party, but it is an important and a forward-looking element inside this closer economic partnership. So the Labour Memorandum of Understanding and the Environment Agreement provide an opportunity for New Zealand to seek input from non-government sectors in identifying and developing potential areas for cooperation. So if there are areas where we can cooperate with Hong Kong over labour standards, they may be health and safety standards, they may be more than that, they may be to do with income levels. If we can, or if we can assist with environmental protections and production of goods and delivery of services in a way that minimises the emissions impact of those commodities and services, then both economies, and I suggest even in a very small way, the world, the global environment is enhanced. So these things are now no longer simply clip-on elements. An agreement about labour standards and an agreement about environmental standards have become an integral part of this closer economic partnership, but of other free trade agreements as well. This is the way of the world moving forward. Free trade agreements can be used for more than simply free trade. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call John Hay.